Thank you, God.
What's up, man?
Oh, dude. Hanging in there. I got my belly full of breakfast burrito.
Oh, hey, I had a breakfast burrito too.
That's the only way to go.
Yeah, yours
So,
was probably better. I think you made your own though, right?
yeah,
Yeah, Taco Bell made mine for me.
that works.
They're
Taco
good
Bell.
people.
Taco Bell has not let me down since 1988.
Really? That's hard to believe. That is
Really?
quite a track record with Taco Bell. Maybe I go to Taco Bell more than you.
I lived across from a Taco Bell when I was just out of high school, too.
Yeah,
There was a lot of Taco Bell going down.
yeah. Oh yeah. Oh, high school is the best time for Taco Bell because your body can do anything, and so it can digest anything. Nothing gives you acid reflux.
Yeah,
Like, yeah, it can be 3 in the morning and you're like, let's go get Taco Bell. If
100%.
I do that now, I have to take some pills and I need to prepare for the next day and the inevitability of what it's going to do to my bowels.
You got to pre-stage the treatment process.
Yeah, it's just a lot. It's a lot to get ready for.
Yeah,
I don't know
but
how
it's so
anybody
worth it.
does.
It is so worth
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, totally. It's totally great. All right. Welcome to Comics in the Making. My name is Ryan Holgerson. I'm the creator of Slackmatic, and I'm joined, as always, by Levi Erickson, the creator of The Big. Levi, how you doing, man?
it. I'm doing pretty good.
Hell yeah.
Ready to
What
rock.
we what are we talking about today?
I think this is going to be a how to make comics episode again, and
Uh-huh.
where so you've conceptualized your idea, you've gone through your workflow process, however you got those images and story on paper, and this is kind of like how you make sure you got it right. We're independent, we're self-published, creator owned, um, usually an army of one working on these books. So there's no one there to oversee and give those critiques and criticisms. You're putting a lot on yourself just in labor alone, but you're also counting on yourself to catch yourself making mistakes or relying on yourself to look back on your work and go, you know what? That sucks.
Yeah.
But we're talking about self-editing.
Yeah. I think it's important. You almost have to go into a different mode, I think. I think doing comics because and I'm other forms of art are like this too, music, writing, um, whatever. But I think with comics, because we, especially with us where we are an army of one, and we have to wear so many different hats. We wear the writer hat, we wear the penciler hat, we wear the inker hat, we wear the colorist hat, we wear the publisher hat, you know. And so I guess today we're going to kind of talk about the editing hat. And I think when you go into that mode, any of these modes, you really kind of got to put yourself into a different mindset. You're no longer the artist. You're the writer. And I think it's important to remember that comics is a storytelling medium.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the story is it's the most important part. I think for us, maybe it's the art that hooks us first. Like if we're just walking in a comic store or flipping around online, it's the art that grabs us, but it's the story that keeps you there.
100%. We've talked about following characters. Like I can say for myself, when I was much younger, I followed characters and I would notice the art changing and I had preferences. But I wanted to know what Wolverine was up to, and it didn't,
Mhm.
right? Oh, Wolverine's guest appearing in, you know, slapstick or one of NFL Super Pro. I'm getting that one because I am so into Wolverine.
Yeah,
At the time, I don't know if he ever appeared in those books, but considering when those books were published, he probably did.
yeah,
But yeah,
yeah.
find me a Marvel comic from the '90s. from like 89 to 91 that didn't have Wolverine in it.
Yeah, no.
But
That was
anyway,
like their go-to.
anyway,
He was the Deadpool of the time. Now it's Deadpool.
yeah.
Deadpool and everything.
But yeah, but then I started following creators. And then sometimes that would lead you to a place where you're like, well, this is fine. I followed Liefeld to Youngblood, and then after about 3 issues, I'm kind of like, I don't know. That is, much love, but that wasn't hitting for me at that stage in my time.
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, you know, he was really doing his own thing, and he was wearing all the hats, and also dealing with having his team, you know, for better or for worse. I mean,
Yeah.
the history is written. We can all look at it. We can all see that. And I think that's the challenge of, where you're stoked on your cool drawings, and the work it took to make those drawings. But to take a step back and go, you know what? Even though that panel rocks, this entire page is unnecessary.
Right. Right. Well, and I think, kind of go into what you were talking about with Rob Liefeld and the Image guys and stuff like that. When they were bringing out all those books and stuff, and especially Extreme Studios, that was just like, it was like book after book after book after book.
Oh, yeah.
And so when you think about all the books in that studio and stuff like that, it's definitely not manga speed, where this was they were so much shit about them getting books out on time and stuff like that. But I do think they were kind of overextending themselves on a sort of manga speed sort of system, and maybe not handling it right. These are all, they're kids, man. I mean, they're like all in their early mid-20s.
Yep.
So I don't think it's a far stretch to look at those books and know what was really missing, and it was some like critical editing.
Yep.
Getting those books out. Now, to take it back to manga, and I think you can definitely look at some manga and probably say, this probably isn't the best writing and stuff like that. There's so much of it. But for the mangaka that are working on this weekly deadline, and they're doing 16 to 20 pages a week. If you look at their schedules, we talked about their schedules a little bit, like in our manga episode and everything. The 3 to 4 days, the first 3 to 4 days of that week are writing and working with an editor to get that name, which is what they call their layouts, to get that right. And then, which is even crazier, because that means they're doing the 16 pages in like 3 days.
Right. Yeah.
So, but that's how important to them the writing and the editing is. So what, like, you're writing a long form story right now, 4-issue series on Bigfoot. What are you doing, like, in the writing process and the editing process, to make sure you're not doing a bunch of, redundant pages or stuff that's not needed?
Yeah, exactly. And that like, there are basically two operating principles that I'm going by. And the number one, like the golden, I don't know if you want to call it golden rule, but it's in visual storytelling, it's always show, don't tell. Don't have someone throwing a punch and then have dialogue box going, I'm going to punch you. I'm punching you so hard that you're never going to remember your name. You don't need to. You make the drawing effective.
If you want to see great examples of that, just look at all the comics from the 60s.
Yeah. Holding the, like the villain knocks the girl he kidnapped out, and the hero's holding her in his arms, and he's like, "You knocked her out, you fiend!" And it's like, yeah, we know.
Yeah.
You're slowing the story down when you do that, and that should be a dramatic moment. part of a sequence that's supposed to be a big hook in your story, and you're just
Right.
slowing it down by doing that. You know,
Yeah.
take take that stuff out. You know, I'm not going to say that I believe that there are hard fast rules on page count or panel count. Certainly we saw in the 90s people getting by with 3 panel layouts throughout a whole book.
Yeah.
I know that because I have them all. They're back there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was all about it. And I think that's when the balance tips the other way. Um, and then your story can still become confusing. And then you find yourself putting a bunch of dialogue boxes to explain to people what's happening because you're making these pages with all these cool drawings and there's no visual storytelling, or it's hard to follow. So,
Right.
you show, don't tell. And then don't repeat yourself.
Yeah.
Kind of what you were saying.
Yeah.
Which I had sort of a predicament with my, ending my first issue. And there's important dialogue as exposition and also to build tension. But when I look back at my script, when I'm starting to do layouts, I realized there's 4 pages of talking heads to finish this story. That doesn't make any sense. That's not fun. I don't want to read that. So I condensed the final 3 pages into one.
Right.
And a little bit of alteration on dialogue, but also making sure that the visuals communicate as much as possible to the reader. I mean, your readers will get the point.
Right.
If you offer it to them. You don't
Right.
you don't have to hit them over the head with it.
Yeah. Well, I think to that point, to I think a lot of stories start in the beginning. I know that's where stories start, but sometimes the beginning is boring.
Star Wars started right in the middle with episode 4.
Right. Right. But there's excitement to that.
Yeah.
I like to watch a lot of action movies and stuff like that. And sometimes they start off with this big fight, which is actually in the middle of the story, and then they kind of flash back, to the beginning, because it's to get you hooked. And if it started at the beginning, you'd be like, oh my God, and like I love John Wick is one of I would put John Wick on the level of I'm you know what, I'm gonna say it. I think it's the best action series ever made. For as far as like here's these 4 movies, I think from beginning to end, it is just awesome. Where everyone is just upping the ante. But that first movie, and it works in that movie. It works. But if you've seen that movie, the first almost half of the movie is like, what's going on here? It's a sad Keanu Reeves, which we all know and love, but it's a sad Keanu Reeves. His wife's just died. He's going to the gas station. There's like jerky Russian dudes, but like there's not a lot of action until these guys break into his house and they steal his car and they kill his dog, which is the explosion that starts the whole John Wick series. And it works in that because now you hate those guys. You hate those guys so much. They just made sad Keanu Reeves even sadder. And now you want to watch another hour of him killing every single person that has ever done him wrong.
You could probably watch those series, those movies, and just every time that his character is referred, just in your mind go Frank Castle, and now you're watching The Punisher.
Yeah, pretty much. Much.
And I thought about this, so it's kind of an aside, but you remember that Kurt Russell movie, The Soldier? So
wait, no, I never saw it. I don't think I saw it.
Okay, so it's like space, futuristic, whatever. It came from a culture raised from a kid to be a soldier. If you watch that through the lens of he is a clone trooper that somehow got through Order 66, you can make it a Star Wars spinoff if you just go into it going, this is a Star Wars thing, and I'm going to make it work for my own brain. If you
Yeah.
want them. But I was like, wow, yeah, that totally fits.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
to go back to your point about dropping you kind of in the middle of a movie, from the opening credits, and then spending the next half bringing you to that moment, and then going from that moment, to the resolution.
Yeah.
Think about Goodfellas. That's Goodfellas.
Or Kill Bill.
Yeah,
Kill
yeah,
Bill, he has chapters. Chapter 1 is 2.
yeah,
So it starts with her, she's already done all of this stuff. You don't know it. And if you think about Kill Bill, and if that movie had started with that first part of her being in the hospital and stuff like that, it would have been, it's still Tarantino. It would have been great, but it's not the same. He started it there on 2 because we're going to start with this fight scene. You're going to immediately know what the bride is all about. She kicks ass, and she's going to go in here, and also you're going to see what she's up against. Here's another assassin that she's fighting.
yeah.
So when it comes to editing, especially that first part, which is what we're talking about, is how are you going to hook that reader?
No, yeah, 100%. I mean, and those are all important editorial decisions. Imagine how different John Wick would be if he just woke up one morning and then we had to follow him through all those events to bring him. It'd be a very slow movie,
Yeah.
Or, if we're watching Goodfellas and we're watching a kid, it might be kind of interesting to see the kid kind of like mingle with the local little mob guys. But you get some popcorn, you wouldn't be sucked into the film. And those are all editorial decisions that have to be considered.
Yeah. Right. So the other thing I think is don't be afraid to kill your darlings.
Mm-hmm.
There have been so many times, for people that have read my work, I my whole thing is kind of horror and humor. And so I'm always, building up either a joke or I'm building up a horrific moment. And so there have been a ton of jokes that I've come up with while writing whatever story that I'm working on, that when I go back and I start knocking out the pages, I just realize that this is just a gaggy joke. It messes up the flow of the story. Maybe it's not landing where I need it to land. Like, I don't want a joke to land in the middle tier of a page. Like, it should be, that should be kind of one of the last beats
Yep.
of a page. Usually, I mean, there's exceptions, but there have been a bunch of times where I've had this joke, and sometimes I'm not even lying. The joke was like the main reason I wanted to do that story. It was like, oh man, this is great. This is going to get people so excited about this joke. And then as I scripted out and wrote everything and got to doing it, I realized I don't need that joke. I don't need it in there anymore. And I think it's real easy to go, but that's the whole reason I did this. The whole reason I did this was because of that moment in the story. Well, maybe it's not that story anymore. You still told a story. You're still obviously, or I would think, somewhat excited about it. It's okay to cut that if it's not working,
Yep.
And I think as a writer, no one's going to be more passionate about what you're doing than you.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's not working for you, the most passionate person that's working on this project, is it going to work for just a passive reader.
Right. Right.
So yeah, I cannot stress enough, like, that whole just, be okay with killing your darlings.
No, yeah.
Um
Yeah. And you
for
got me thinking there's there's a third one,
mhm.
so show don't tell, don't repeat yourself. And then I just forgot the third one.
It's really good.
Oh yeah, it's the
It's
most
so
important
good.
one. It's the most important one. You know, I totally. What you're saying made me think of it now, and now it's like, oh my god,
Yeah.
wow.
Well,
We might have to cut. We might have to cut this when I remember
we might have to edit the editing episode.
it.
It's very apropos.
Image.
Um, well, I'm always trying to cut down
Mhm.
my stuff. Um,
Oh, I remember.
okay, go.
Well, keep going, but I remember I'm writing it down.
No.
Well,
You go. You
we
go.
will fix
Because
this.
I was just filibustering. So
We will we're gonna fix this in post. I'm gonna be writing it down so I don't forget.
well, no, I'm always trying to see what I can cut down.
Right.
I am not a fan of this. You know, to be honest, most manga, like shonen manga and stuff like that, most of the comics that are coming out from Marvel and DC that are just set up for this 6 volume, or the six comics for a trade paperback. um I'm not really a fan of that storytelling. I like, let's get to the point, you know. Um and I don't know, that might not be a popular opinion. We look at a lot of media now, I guess, in this quote unquote golden age of television, and a lot of TV series are doing that. I mean, there's a lot of TV shows that I watch where I'm like, why is this fucking 12 episodes? This could have been this could have been 6. There's a bunch of there's a bunch of stuff that's just like, it, and it's not interesting to me.
Yeah.
But I could be in the minority. I could be in the one, I don't know. But for me, I like that one and done story. Let's get to the point. Um, you know, if I write a 50 some page story, I think I'd like to say that it has to be 50 some pages. I'm not doing it because I'm like, I just want to write a long story and I'm making it as long as possible and adding in a bunch of crap. When I write a 50 some page story, then that it has to be that. I wrote it because that's how long it takes me to get from the beginning to the end
Yeah.
of the story. And I just see a lot of stuff, from major publishers that are, well, we want to hit this mark.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you see that a lot in the YA books of these, trade paperbacks and stuff like that, because they're selling, and I get it, but everyone wants to get into this YA stuff, and they're like, they all want to do this YA series because that's how you keep the sales up and you keep people interested.
Right.
But not all of it works. I mean, I check out as much stuff as I can, and kind of when I flip through it, I'm like, why is this a 200-page graphic novel?
Right. Right. And of course, the big publishers have different motivation behind the stuff. I mean, to say nothing of the creative teams, they're coming from their, you know, they're doing the best that they can, but they have directives up on high. There are editorial decisions that are being made that are looking at spreadsheets and numbers, vice, what we get to do and think about what we feel is best for our story, or a smaller publisher
Right.
where you may have an editor, but there's no board upstairs going, hey, what are you doing about these numbers next month?
Right. Well, this goes back to our episode about the benefits of being small.
Mm-hmm.
And that it's a benefit of being small. You can do whatever you want. So you don't have to take a 10-page story and make it into a 22-page story. You don't have to take a 50 some page story and make it into a 200-page story.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
can do it the way that feels natural to you and for a reader.
And you
Um,
don't have anyone coming into your, your emails or whatever the communication link is going, oh yeah, the numbers on the clone store you did were really, really good and they want more of that. So do more of that,
right.
you know.
Um, get into your show and tell, show don't tell.
Yep.
Um, just getting back to that, think about it. And I really do hate the comparison of comics to movies. Um, I get it. I understand why it's there, but it's comics should be used as the comics medium, and
Yes.
you shouldn't be drawing a comic because you can't make your movie.
Yes.
I'm sorry, that's just the way I feel. Um, I understand wanting to get your story out and stuff like that, but
Yeah.
anyway,
You
that's just me.
want to make film and TV? Go to film and TV.
I mean, most of our iPhones are, pretty powerful cameras, so I mean, figure it out, dude. But anyway, um, getting to a movie. If you're watching a movie, imagine something happening in a movie and them having to pop up a caption or them having to add a narrator going, and then he punched her in the face. That
Yeah.
that's not the way that works. And comics being first and foremost a visual medium, you should be able to show that in your drawing.
Yes.
You've got to figure out, and I think that's an important thing. How can I figure this out in a drawing before I can figure it? I have to add a caption or a narration or something like that.
Yeah, yeah. And I think, I don't know if we have, we always talk about the Marvel method versus the DC method. I think those are anachronisms in 2023. Um, I don't feel that that happens with the major publishers. I don't think there's any hard, fast way things are produced. But, when we were coming up and we were learning about how the comics we were reading were produced, we were told that yeah, so the artist gets a loose plot, draws all the pages, and then it goes, those pages go different directions to inkers and whatever, but it also goes to the maybe back to the writer who determines the dialogue based on what the artist drew.
yeah,
um so at least as far as legacy Marvel comics, the story should be apparent with no dialogue.
yeah,
And that was what I understood the artist's job was to do,
yeah,
was was to, even if it's a conversation, you don't know what they're saying, but
yeah,
based on the action before and after, you kind of probably know what they're talking about and how important that conversation is
yeah.
based on those visuals.
Right. And yet they still plastered him with fucking
Yeah.
narration and word balloons and everything. It's just, I mean, I've got some of those. I love looking at old Jack Kirby art, um, and stuff like that. But dude, it's a slog to read. Like I mean, I'll tell you right now, I have not read it. I flipped through it. I'm like, what does he do here? I love appreciating the art. I'm not reading that shit. I can't. It's just like, oh God, it's just yeah.
Yeah.
And it was a different time too.
Well,
You
well,
know,
sure.
it really was. People, I mean, people read more. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so, so yeah. So all right, before we run out of time, you said there was a third one.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
So
you remembered.
I remembered. So we got show don't tell, we got don't repeat yourself, and we have don't distract.
Okay.
And don't distract can be a visual, I mean, and that's where technical things will come in, like tangents in your
Hmm.
artwork, and maybe something off model, or you're too wonky of perspective. Technical stuff like that can be a distraction. But also, if you decide to run a sidebar and you think it's cool, it's like, okay, I'm going to yank them out of the action and drop them over here and get them a taste of what these characters are about, and then I'm going to pull them back into the main story again. that could work. And I'm sure anyone, could in the comments, if you know where that worked, let us know. But that's a way to distract. And from a self-editing standpoint, you have to make sure that you're staying honest and true to what the overall goal of the product is going to be, what the
Yeah.
storytelling goal is.
Right.
You have another story to tell, I mean, maybe it needs a different comic book if it's going to be distracting.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I agree with that. You know, I also want to say I think all of everything that we're talking about, this still is, you know, it's just like drawing. It takes that 10,000 hours
Mhm.
to get better at it.
Yeah.
There's not a, what I mean, I'm sure there are, but there's not really an editing class of, here's how to edit a comic, because every story is going to be different. Every comic's going to be different, and so it just takes time of trying to figure out, you know, how to pace something out. And my advice is always do it. That's our thing. Do the damn thing. You've got to, you have to do it. You have to see what works. Also absorb people that are doing it well. Absorb people that are doing it bad. Like all
Yeah.
of it, because you should be able to recognize those Rob Liefeld 90s comics. You should be able to look at those and go, this isn't working.
Mhm.
um and how can I do this better, or how can I do this different? What would have fixed this to make it work? How could I have looked at this, X-Force comic or whatever, and
Yeah.
made this work?
Yeah. And then that was one of the things I think, when you would look, I remember reading other artists and say, hey, how do you become a better penciler? One of the things was find the worst comics you have
Yeah.
and find out why you don't like them and redo the pages. Just, act like you had that assignment.
Yeah.
That page sucks. What needs to change? And that makes me want to ask you, when you come back to your work, you've stepped away as the artist writer. What do you do to come back and look at it from a different lens and editorial lens?
I mean, it's hard to say, because I hate I've just been doing it so long that it almost, seems kind of natural. But okay, so the easiest thing I can say to do, and I believe this is a Stephen King trick, is write your thing and then put it in a drawer and put it away.
Mhm.
And maybe don't come back to it for a while. Now in our case, where we're trying to put out regular stuff, that while might be a couple days.
Mhm.
But I think when you come back to it, because you've had that time away from it, you'll have a more critical eye. And maybe now you're reading it as like, I didn't write this. And I mean, and a lot of times like when we talk about writing and we talk about ideas and stuff, we don't know where that shit comes from. Like, we don't. I mean, most of the stories I write, I'm like, I don't, it's just there now.
Yep.
And when I'm really in the mode, I mean, it really is, it is just stream of consciousness coming out, pouring onto my notepad when I'm writing.
Hmm.
Um, and because of that, sometimes it sucks. Sometimes it needs that, and walking away from it for a certain amount of time and coming back helps me, uh, clears me up a little bit, to where I go, okay, this wasn't working. Overall, the story, I got it. The
Yep.
story's fine. I like the story, but how can we tell this and make it really work?
Right. Right. And sometimes it's not even like, changing hats. sometimes it just happens as you're making it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, during the thumbnail phase, or even like I mentioned before, I did layouts for all those pages, and I just got to looking at the thumbnails, and I said, this is 4 pages of talking heads. This
Yeah.
makes zero sense. How can
Yeah.
I get around that? All right, it's not going to be a 24-page comic. It's going to be a 22-page comic because
Yeah.
I'm condensing 3 pages to one.
Right.
And let's just get on with it and get done.
Yeah.
Speaking of getting done, I think we're just about there on this episode. We
We
have
are.
a lot more to talk about, but you know, it's time for us to turn off the cameras and pick up the pencils or the
Right.
stylus, as it were.
I've already inked 1 page today. What'd
Shit.
you do, Levi? What'd you do?
I
made breakfast burritos.
made a breakfast burrito.
All right, Levi, get us out of here.
All right, do the damn thing.
Yeah.
Take that.